Welcome to the Hot Mess Medium Show. I am your host, Natashia, your small-town, international, evidential psychic medium. I am your favorite, highly sensitive human with ADHD, your intuition and mediumship mentor, and I'm a hot mess mama of four who happens to speak to the dead for a living. I get super lit up and excited when it comes to stories where you're like, you cannot make this shit up. I'm talking about divine orchestration, experiences with past loved ones, all things intuition, angels, and being a highly sensitive human. In my world, we laugh together, we cry together, and we keep it super real. I am so excited you're here. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Hot Mess Medium Show. I have no idea what this episode is meant to be about or what is going to come through. I haven't done this in a while. I feel like since, officially rebranding this podcast as the Hot Mess Medium Show, I've kind of come in with a bit of a plan or kind of knew, where this was going, sort of thing. But in my previous podcast, this was sort of the vibe all of the time. And I think there's part of me who was trying to steer away from that. Even though I swear those episodes ended up being like the best and the most loved. I think there's just always this part of me who will want to just be more normal and put together and have a bit more of a plan, even though I work best sometimes when I'm just kind of like going with the flow and just allowing whatever is meant to come through, I always trust that what is meant to come through will, and it'll be perfect for whoever's listening. But yeah, so if you're an OG around here, this is kind of like normal. If you are new here, then yeah, surprise. So I actually just finished doing wait, it's so weird. As I'm talking, I could literally hear spirit in my mind talking about, like, why go against the current? Why go against the current when you can just, like, flow in the river? Yeah, I love being called out like that. Maybe one of you need to hear this, though. Why go against the current if you can just, like, float in the river? Why do we make things harder for ourselves when we can choose, like, what's already working? But I think for me personally, again, it's just that part of me that's always sort of been there that wants to do things the quote-unquote right way, how others seem to do it, how others seem to have it all figured out, and they plan things. I know some people for podcasts, they'll literally have a script, or even just, point form of what to talk about. And that, the point form thing or having a general idea does work for me. I'm not saying like it doesn't and I can't do that. No, that definitely does. But then there's just times where I'm so in my head and I have to just surrender. I have to say, screw it. I'm going to hit record and I'm just going to start talking and trust that, again, I already said this, but just to like say it again, whatever comes through is going to be perfect for whoever's meant to hear it. Because I am such an intuitive person, I am a channel, and so channeling is my thing. But if my head is in the way, right, if my ego is like trying to take over and like, no, you better plan this out and you need to be more professional and have your shit together or whatever, it's just not gonna work. Like, you can't force creativity. You know what I mean? Anyways, moving forward. I just finished doing a mediumship reading, a private virtual session, and wow, it like knocked my socks off. You know what I mean? It was one of those sessions where I was like, holy shit, I love my job. Like, spirit was just so on point, and the evidence was just like out of this world. And yeah, it was just like one of those sessions that reminded me of why I do what I do, why I love what I do so much, and how grateful I am for this relationship I have with spirit, how much it's grown over time and, over the years. And just to, give you an example. So actually, before I started the session, this is what I do for all of my readings. Before I hop on the call, I will take a moment to just sit down. I take some deep breaths and I set an intention, because I think intention is really important. And I invited forward, my clients' loved ones, who she was truly hoping to hear from, and also who she is needing to hear from. And I always set the intention that, whatever comes through is for her highest good, healing, and closure, and all that stuff. Anyways, there's stuff that I'm missing, but you get the point. And as I was doing that, I could feel a father with me. He's like making his presence known, and I knew it was a father. And I also was noticing that I had the shakes a little bit, which I thought was really interesting. So yeah, because sometimes I will feel things before the session begins. I believe I've shared about that before, but something that happened yesterday that was really cool right before a session. I felt like I had a colostomy bag, like specifically. I could feel a colostomy bag in my stomach, and I knew exactly what it was. And it turned out, once it organically came through the session, meaning I didn't bring it up unless it came up from the spirit when I was linked with that spirit. I don't usually mention those things unless it comes up, like I said, kind of like naturally from the spirit when I'm linked up with them. Or I'll mention it at the very end. I don't come in with all this like stacked information, even if spirit is giving me information in the beginning. Yeah, not sure why I'm mentioning that, but I am. Anyways, so going back to today's reading, like I said, I knew I had a father, but I waited to see who was coming through first. When I was, when I turned it on and I was ready to welcome forward whatever loved one was meant to come forward first. And sure enough, it was this gentleman, this father figure. And I could see that he was really tall, and I could see like his wide chest and shoulders. And the weird thing was, though, and this is like where it's just so incredible how spirit works. He was showing up in the dark. And I didn't know how to explain this or describe this because I just couldn't. I didn't want it to sound like a negative thing, so like my head was getting into it a little bit. And so I said that. I was like, okay, let me just see if I can figure this out before putting this out there. Even though I teach my students to just say it as it comes, so that you don't block the flow. But anyways, so again, he's showing me him in the dark, and then I'm like trying to get a little bit more from him. And then I hear, it's like I see a light switch and it's being turned off. The lights are off, and I said that. And then I said, it's like, that expression, like there's nobody home. And he was pointing to his head when he said that. It's like there's nobody home. That's what he said. And I said, it's so weird. It's like I could see him, but it's like I'm only seeing, the shadow of him. It's like he's in the dark. She ended up validating that, and it was so friggin' wild because this piece of information actually had a few different meanings, and that's like, I just love when this happens. It's just so incredible to me. I'm such a nerd for mediumship, like seriously. Anyways, she said that he was always sitting at home with the lights off. Like he didn't like the lights being on. He always had the lights off. Okay, so that was like part of it. So it made sense that he was showing up with the lights off. He was showing up in the dark. But also, him pointing to his head and I did say before she gave any validation, I feel like because he's pointing to the head and he's using that expression, like there's nobody home, I feel as though he struggled, mentally, like there's something going on, with his, either mental health or something like that. It had something to do with the mind anyways. I can't quite remember. But anyways, so another thing that she validated, she said, my husband used to say that about him, that it's like there's nobody home, like in here, pointing to his head. And anyways, so she was able to validate all of that, but it was just wild how, like, just the way it all came through and how it had all these different meanings, but it was all able to be validated. So that was super cool. And, yeah, I love this friggin' work so much. Anyways, this kind of leads me to sharing something that I've noticed from the past few readings, actually literally the one today and the 2 readings that I did yesterday. There's been a theme, and so I feel called to share about that. And this theme was that, so for each of these readings, these 3 readings, it was a parent stepping forward. Yesterday it was 2 moms, today it was a father. And every single one of them were stepping forward, taking ownership and responsibility for their shortcomings, for the things that they had done, the things that they didn't do. And so there must be something in the air right now. Nothing is coincidence. There's absolutely zero coincidence that all 3 sessions had the same sort of theme, with a parent coming forward. And again, being like apologetic. All 3 of them said, "Do not forgive me for me. Forgive me for you." Every single one of them said that. And every client needed to hear that. How did I not get in my head, thinking I was making that up for all 3 of them? I don't know. It's probably just the years of practice and training and all of that stuff. But every single one of them needed to hear that. And it's just so true. Don't forgive me for me. Do it for you. Because you are carrying burdens, because of me. And I want you to be free of that. You deserve to be free of that. And it's so true. Oftentimes we have this idea in our minds of what forgiveness is, or why we shouldn't forgive, or why we don't want to forgive, not realizing that it has nothing to do with the other person. It has everything to do with freeing ourselves from those burdens that we are carrying because we're holding on so tight, And I have my own experience with that, with forgiveness, and how liberating it is. it's so wild how for so many years I carried these burdens, I carried this pain, I carried, the trauma and, all that stuff. I carried that with me, and it's almost like it became part of my identity. And that prevented me from being who I actually am. It prevented me from getting to know who I actually am. Because all of this stuff that I carried just kind of, what is even the word? It just took over. It was overpowering, because it was just so heavy. So that makes perfect sense. It was always just so heavy. But yeah, I didn't want to let it go, because I didn't want that to mean that what the person did was okay. If I let this go, then that means that I'm letting them off the hook. Or if I let this go, then that means that, what they did was okay. If people see that I'm fine, they're going to think I'm lying about what happened to me. If people see me happy and thriving, they're going to think that what they did to me didn't affect me or impact me. Those are the things that used to play in my mind. And it feels extremely vulnerable sharing this, but I'm just being real with you guys. And obviously I didn't know this was the direction of this episode, but I'm going along with it. Yeah, I guess that's what went through my mind, but that kept me trapped. It was like I was going through life literally with shackles on me. Not literally, obviously, but you know what I mean. It was heavy. It's like carrying a ball and chain with you wherever you go, thinking that this is it for me. This is my life. This is who I am. I couldn't have been more wrong. When I got to the point of being ready to forgive, it changed something in me on a cellular level. I'm not even kidding. It freed me from who I thought I was. It freed me from those past versions of myself that were clinging on for dear life. It truly changed something in me, and it's like it freed my soul so that I could actually be who I came to this earth to be versus be what happened to me while being on this earth, right? Because we are a soul first. We are a soul first. Our body is temporary. And so the things that happen to us here on this earth are not who we truly are, right? We are not of this world, but we are here to learn, to experience all that stuff. No, none of us really know the real reason why, but you know what I mean? We're here. And it's like Earth school, right? So your experiences in your past, they help shape who you are. Absolutely. But you are so much more than that. Right? There's so many things that we go through that give us character, that help bring out our personality, that give us strength, that make us resilient, that help us learn what to do, what not to do, hopefully, maybe. maybe we learned to do the opposite because of what had been done to us. But what I'm getting at is that we are so much more than that, right? And we do not need to be defined by our earthly experiences. So for me personally, as I was saying, when I got to a place where I could finally forgive, for me, not for them, it was a permission slip to start thriving. It was a permission slip to start. What I just heard in my head is like realizing that I'm actually whole and complete. Like that person, those people didn't take anything away from me. I am whole and complete on my own, and I don't need to give anyone that sort of power over me. It's a permission slip to live life on your terms versus living life on those terms. The terms and conditions that they quote unquote gave you. Now, reaching a point of forgiveness, it took time for me. It's not something that, I was like, okay, I'm just going to decide to do this. It happened organically. It truly did. After like a series of events that took place, it was so divinely orchestrated. And I know that this happened because I put it out there that I was ready to let go and be free of those things. And after a series of events and through divine orchestration, which is just so wild. I don't know if I'll ever share like the whole story of how this happened, because it just feels so deeply personal. But maybe someday, because I do share quite a bit with you guys. But either way, I was able to see this person in a completely different light. All of a sudden, I realized that I had grown so much that I outgrew who I was and all those things that I believed before. And again, I was able to see this person through a completely different set of lenses and realize that it was never personal. And I know that's like really hard for people to hear, and I'm sorry if you don't resonate with that. I can just see how people who are in pain, they do things because of that pain and from that pain. It does not make it okay. It does not excuse their behaviors or anything like that. But people who are in pain, they, this person was in pain. That's how I'm going to put it. This person was in pain and he allowed it to overflow onto those around him. He allowed his pain to spill out over onto those around him. And oftentimes people do that with those that they love. For some reason, it's easier. I have no idea. It's really fucked up. Who knows why things happen the way they do or why people do the things that they do. Again, zero excuses here. I'm just sharing from my own experience that I can see that the people who hurt others, it's literally because of their own pain. And it's not, for me, my experience, I can see how it was never personal. And it was literally, even though it happened to me, I acknowledge that. And what happened was very real. And I, experienced so much in my life, like pain and turmoil and whatever, because of those choices that that person made. I understand that. Either way, hurt people hurt people. people are the way they are because of their pain and their experiences. And it's unfortunate that they are then making choices from that. Just like how I was living the way I was living, and I was being who I was being, and deciding this is how my life is, this is who I am, because of the things that happened to me. I was doing the same thing, but in a different way. I wasn't causing hurt onto others, I was causing hurt onto myself. I was causing hurt onto myself. I was keeping myself trapped and stuck and small. When I forgave, like I said, it changed me on such a deep level that's like, I don't even know, it's like miraculous. Like there's not even any like logical way to explain it. But I found peace and wholeness in that moment and following that. It's like I no longer needed this outside validation, or I no longer needed to, again, live by the rules, terms, and conditions that had been placed on me because of the things that I experienced. And yeah. Now, does this mean that I needed to keep this person in my life because I forgave? Absolutely not. Just because you forgive someone, it doesn't mean they need to come back into your life. It doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't mean anything. It gets to mean what you want it to mean. You get to decide what is best for you. You get to choose the boundaries you are going to place. The other thing coming through to mention right now is that usually with these people, when it comes to whatever, the situation is, we kind of turn into little us. I know that was the case for me. Whenever I thought of this person, or I was near this person, or anything like that, it's like I would shrink and I would become little me all over again. And I noticed that after I forgave, that stopped happening. Again, this was just my own experience. I'm just sharing it for you guys, for whoever is meant to hear this right now. So it's important to know that, okay, wait, how do I want to frame this? What I learned was to notice when I would shrink into little me and I would turn into like parent me. I would like channel my own inner parent and be who little me needed. And I would make decisions from that place, not let little me make decisions, right? Because then you're making decisions from fear, insecurity, people pleaser, no boundaries. Yeah, it's just not good. Like, not good to make decisions when you're in that space of being little you and shrinking down. You got to protect your inner child. You got to find it in you to channel your inner parent, be your inner parent. Remind yourself you are a grown adult who can make decisions that are best for you and little you. You know what I mean? And from that space, from that mindset, you can make empowered decisions. And that alone is going to bring so much healing to little you. like so much healing, because you're deciding to be who you needed, and you are owning that you are a grown-up who can make those decisions for yourself. That's when you can start setting boundaries and deciding what is truly best for you. What is truly best for you? Because if it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. In other cases, when you're able to get to that point of forgiveness and see that person in a different light, understanding that their little them is showing, like, the little boy inside of them is showing, the little girl inside of them is showing, and you can accept them for who they are. Not that we're not talking about enabling them. We are not talking about giving them any reins or power over you or your life. We are not talking about having no boundaries with them or anything like that. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about when you're able to love and accept a person for who they are. So obviously, the situation is going to vary here. It's going to be so different for every single one of you listening to this, because I obviously do not know the circumstances, the situations, anything like that. But for those situations where, like for me personally, I was able to get to a space where I can love and accept a person for who they are, while continuing to have certain boundaries in place. And the relationship was then able to continue as long as those boundaries were in place. But here's the thing, I am moving forward in this relationship knowing that I am not able to change or control the other person. Because that's really important. We cannot change a person. We cannot fix them. We cannot force them to be someone else. Even if we're like, we have this idea in our minds of like, I want them to be who I need. No, we can't do that. We can't do that. The other thing I'm hearing in my mind is like, we get to show others how we want to be treated. And that was the case for me. I got to show these individuals, or this individual, because I'm just like kind of trying to keep this as like neutral as possible without like oversharing. But I got to keep them in my life, but with boundaries, while accepting and appreciating who they are without trying to fix or change them, or having expectations that were going to then be, lead to disappointment. So for me, with the circumstances and everything, like, this was possible. This was possible, but it may not be possible for everyone. It may not be, and that's okay. Anyways, how did we get here? I have no freaking idea. I don't even know where to go from here. Other than, I feel so much peace in my heart because I'm not carrying on to hate, or I'm not allowing the things from my past to define me. I'm able to appreciate how they shaped me into who I am now, but without carrying the the heaviness of what happened to me. And I just hope that this inspires you, if you made it this far, to maybe take a look at how some of the things from your past are preventing you from being fully present in the now and embracing a better future for yourself. Or giving yourself that permission slip that I was talking about to have that success. Because sometimes we don't realize that there's a part of us that doesn't feel worthy of that, or that doesn't want it because what if this, what if that? It's just like what just popped into my head is like, I know that this is so weird. I don't know why I'm talking about this, but it popped into my head. I know that my weight gain is a layer of protection. And there's anytime I even think of like, okay, I'm going to start working out and I'm going to like do this and I'm going to do that, there's always part of me that comes in, and I don't know if the right word is sabotage or what, but it comes in to protect me from releasing that protection that I've worked so hard to build on my body. It's not funny, but this is the way it's coming through. Because I'm aware of it. I'm aware that this happens. There's a part of me that doesn't feel safe without this extra cushion. You know what I'm saying? And so that's something that I'm gonna have to, work on or whatever. But it's just to give you an example of how, like, there's part of me that fears not having this extra chubbiness on my body because of what that could mean. Okay? Like, it is possible to fear success. It is possible to fear having that body or whatever. By the way, I will say that I feel good in my skin. I've come a long way with all of that, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe like this wasn't the best example, but that's just what popped into my head. Anyways, I hope that as I'm, sharing all of this, it's just kind of bringing things into your awareness, how maybe there's, again, things that you're holding on to that are holding you back, that you didn't even realize. It's like how our subconscious could be afraid of having financial success. So then as soon as you get a large sum of money, you spend it all immediately because there's part of you that does not feel safe holding on to all that money. Like, these are things that happen. Our subconscious minds are incredible, and they have a way of making certain things like that happen without you even like being aware of it, because it's your subconscious mind. But I hope that as I'm talking and sharing all these things, that it's kind of pulling things into your awareness and helping you realize, because once you become aware, damn, that's where you get to take your power back. That's when you get to, start making different choices. That's when you can start, making different choices, right? Because how can we choose differently if we don't know differently? Sometimes we're just so caught up in our day-to-day regular life that we don't realize there's another way. Just like I was saying, more in the beginning about, like, I was living my life on those rules, terms, and conditions that had been placed on me, but I was the one, like, continuing to allow that because I didn't know any different. I didn't know any different until it was different. Right? It's like sometimes we don't know when something is going to be the last time until it's the last time. So, with all that being said, I just want to take a moment to take a deep breath and see if there's anything else that wants to come through. Because this episode is wild to me, you guys. Like, I can't believe everything that I just shared and everything that just came through me. But apparently I really needed to surrender and just let it move through me so that I could share all of this. And so I'm assuming and trusting that you guys needed to hear this. Okay, so I just heard in my mind, we didn't get to decide what happened to us, but we get to decide what we do with it. We get to decide what we do with it. Okay? So, it does not define you. It does not mean you are this or that. It does not get to hold you back from creating the impact that you desire to make, or being of service in the way that you desire to be of service. What is popping into my head now is the fact that I always had issues with public speaking. I had issues with speaking in general, like literally the most insecure person with just talking. Part of it was because I was never allowed to speak my truth as a child. And also because I had crooked teeth for years until I finally had braces when I was, I think, like 15-ish, 14, 15, 16, around there. And so that made me incredibly insecure because my teeth were so bad. It made me so insecure with talking. I used to actually like cover my mouth when I spoke. And I was also silenced as a child because of certain situations, because of things that have happened to me. I was silenced. And so learning to speak, like really speaking, putting myself out there, speaking in front of others, all that stuff was like learning how to fucking ride a bike for the first time. Without any training wheels. That's what it felt like. That's what I can compare it to. It was hard. And I just kept pushing through, even though it was so hard. Even though every time I would speak to someone or, speak in front of people or whatever it was, or had to put myself out there, even the slightest bit, I would literally have a voice in my head yelling at me to shut up or to, like, you're annoying, stop talking. I had the worst inner critic and imposter syndrome like you could ever imagine. And so it was just, I just remember how painful it was just speaking. And I remember too that, I got the nudge at one point to start a podcast. Even though I knew nothing about podcasting, I knew nothing about that at all or how to do it. I think I had a coach at the time who, mentioned her podcast and, she would write this whole script for her podcast and everything. And I was like, well, I definitely won't be doing any of that, but like, can you just show me how to like, make one? And she told me like how to do it. And so, yeah, I decided to start a podcast because my intuition told me to. And I remember the first episode and just like barely making it through. It was just so painful for me to speak and to share and to open up on this, even though I was just me recording to myself. It was brutal. But then the next time I did it, it wasn't so bad. Yes, it was still hard, but it's kind of like, okay, I feel like I'm getting the hang of this. And then I just kept going and going and going. And this podcast actually ended up being pretty darn successful. If I would have kept going with it, it probably would have, gotten somewhere, but unfortunately I didn't. That's definitely a story for another time, but anyways, that's the podcast that I was mentioning in the beginning, like how I used to make episodes like this all the time. Like literally every episode is like, okay, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm just going to start talking. And then every episode ended up being so just perfect. Anyways, I went from thinking I was someone who was shy and couldn't talk in front of others and was terrible at speaking, trips over her words, says a lot, and loses her train of thought all the time when she was speaking. Okay, I went from being that person to now I'm literally going to be a minister speaking in front of groups and crowds, performing wedding ceremonies. Okay, like if you would have told me I'd be doing this a few years back, I would not have believed you. I would have said that is insane, not possible for me. I could never ever do that. And even now, like I'm doing group events often, and those have turned into my favorite thing to do. I love group events so much. And it's just, I'm sharing this with you because I had decided a long time ago I could never do that because of the way I was brought up, because of the things that happened to me, because of who I thought took my power away, and how I just let them continue to have that power. And, there's so many reasons why I said I couldn't. And there's so many things that I had decided for myself that I would never do because of it. And yet, here I am now, proving all of that wrong. I've let go of so much of that bullshit, because that's what that is. All those stories I told myself, complete fucking bullshit. And so much of that comes from our ego, right? Our ego wants to keep us stuck and small and comfortable, even though we think it's comfortable, but it actually keeps us so uncomfortable in the end, because being stagnant is uncomfortable, right? Being stuck is uncomfortable, but we don't realize that at the time, because our ego makes it seem more comforting to just stay where you are and to hold this weight and this burden and these stories and the rules and the whatever, the stories, right? It's your intuition that encourages you to grow and to change and to succeed and to make different choices for yourself. And so, yeah, basically, I'm circling back to the forgiveness thing. Yes, that was a huge part of my journey, but that wasn't everything. Honestly, it was listening to my intuition. Choosing to listen to my intuition instead of the ego. Because your intuition, that's like the creator, that's divine intelligence speaking to you. That's your highest self speaking to you, is through your intuition. That's what you can start choosing to listen to instead of your ego. And this isn't to shit on the ego. We need one, obviously. We need one in order to be human here on Earth. And yeah, obviously it isn't all bad, but we do not need to listen to it all the time, especially when your intuition is trying to chime in and support you and guide you. That was the biggest thing for me, because if I would have listened to my ego, I would not have forgiven. But when I chose to listen to my highest self, that's the decision I made, because that was the right decision for me. And I understand that may not be the best decision for everyone, depending on where you're at. You may not be ready, and that's okay, but maybe someday you will be, and that's okay too. Again, just sharing my own experience. Either way, forgiveness aside, because I know that can be a touchy subject for people. Just, if I could just leave you with one thing, is just start listening to your intuition. Pay attention to those nudges. They're going to be softer and more subtle. They're not as loud and obnoxious as the ego. They're not going to be as convincing. Not at all. But with time, patience, and practice, you can start honing in on your own intuitive guidance. Your life is going to start to change for the best. And if you need support with that, I happen to have a class coming up, depending on when you're listening to this, of course, but June 19th, I have a class all about the basics of intuition. Everything you need to know just to start being more intuitive, listening to your intuition, and making choices and decisions from that space versus the ego. And you'll notice you don't have to look for healing. You don't have to do so much outside of yourself. It's just this like organic process that takes place in your life. It's this like unfolding. It just happens because you become more present, more intentional, more open to change, more open to other possibilities than what you're experiencing right now. So, information for that will be in the show notes, of course. But I think that's a wrap, you guys. Oh my gosh, we did it. We got through this, and part of me was like, I'm so proud of you. Like, I wanted to say that to you. I'm so proud of you. I don't know why, but maybe you need to hear that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. This episode isn't like a typical like topic or, that I would normally talk about, but I hope that it was supportive for you. I really, really hope that it was what you needed, and I would love to hear from you if it was. And if this is what you needed, if this was helpful, let me know. If you're not already following me over on Instagram, everything is Hot Mess Medium. I would love to hear from you, and I'm sending you so much love.